Welcome back to the Redraft Show. I am your boy, Chef GPT, a.k.a. Chef Dor Sanders, a.k.a. the legendary ball knower, and I am here today to talk to you about Week 4's running back rankings, but with a little spin on it. We're going to start, I'm going to give you a countdown, and we're going to talk about my 5-1, my 5 favorite plays of the week, and ending with what would be my start of the week. Now, you're here. You don't need me to tell you to start Jonathan Taylor. You don't need me to tell you that we're, to play Christian McCaffrey. You're doing that anyway. Or if you're not, I don't really know what you're doing. Maybe come, DM me and we can get into some North Korean basketball alt betting lines or something like that. So my 5th favorite running back play of the week, and it's going to be TreVeyon Henderson. TreVeyon Henderson taking on the Carolina Panthers, who have been an absolute run funnel. They're 28th against fantasy running backs in terms of points allowed. This is a 43.5 point over under, and they have a 24.5 point implied point total. The Patriots were able to move the ball pretty well last week, but we got one specific thing that we needed to happen. If you know anything about Mike Vrabel, the Patriots head coach, you know that he hates when running backs fumble the football. So what we got the run out that we needed. We're talking about Ramondre fumbling the football. We're talking about Antonio Gibson fumbling the football. All in all, I believe the Patriots had 4 fumbles this past week. So that brings in TreVeyon, who's never fumbled the ball on 667 collegiate touches and hasn't fumbled the ball as a pro yet. Now, as I say that, watch this. Sunday, the Panthers are going to turn into, a bunch of Peanut Tillmans and punch the ball out. So anyway, this is my favorite spot for TreVeyon so far. Super excited to see what he does. I'm 12 spots higher than the model, as you can see here, on TreVeyon, because I think that we're looking at the breakout that we've wanted, so far for TreVeyon Henderson. And just to remind you, in their first few games, Alvin Kamara and Jahmyr Gibbs both, got off to slower starts. So we're a month into his rookie season. There's no reason to panic on TreVeyon. I think that he's going to seize this opportunity. Now, they do leave a little bit to be desired. They're middle of the pack in terms of a run block unit. So TreVeyon, it's much better than it was. But if we're going to get TreVeyon in a featured role where he's getting the majority of the snaps and the other 2 guys are spelling him, these are the steps that we need to take towards generational wealth. So TreVeyon's my number 5 running back on the week. My number 4 running back here is going to be Mr. Trey Benson taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Now, the model has him slightly lower than where I'm at here because I've been waiting for this. We don't wish injury upon anyone, but you've got to follow a pattern. Once is an accident, twice is a trend. And lightning struck for James Conner, and then the rent came due. So he suffers a season-ending ankle injury, unfortunately. Thoughts and prayers to Mr. James Conner. This is a guy who's as tough as nails, so that this has to be devastating, and he was the heart and soul of that team. But enter Trey Benson. So this is the Thursday night game, and this is a rivalry game. This is a divisional game, and I'm really excited to see this. Now, I'm 10 spots higher because I think that Trey Benson represents the type of threat that is an absolute nightmare for the Seahawks. I think that Trey Benson is this is a 22.5 point implied point total. They're 1.5 point favorites against Seattle. Arizona's coming off a tough loss where they get a safety and end up losing the game. So I think that this is going to be they're going to get back to their bread and butter here. And I think even though they've been the 22nd ranked best run block unit, I think that this is where Trey Benson, with a featured role finally, is going to shine. So he's my number 4 running back favorite play this week. My number 3 is going to be J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins, maybe in my favorite actual spot of the week, but he's my running back 18 in the rankings. And J.K. Dobbins takes on, as a 7-point favorite, they take on the Cincinnati Bengals in a game with a 44.5 point over-under, and they've got a 25.5 point implied point total. So it's a heavy favorite game script. I'm 3 spots lower than the model just because, it feels uncomfortable. But we need to adjust to the real reality that is J.K. Dobbins is here to stay. He's a fantasy relevant piece again. He's hit double-digit fantasy points in all 3 games, and this is the 4th ranked run blocking unit and the 2nd ranked pass blocking unit. And I mean, even though J.K. Dobbins doesn't even catch passes like that, but even still, this is one of the best units in the offensive lines in the NFL. And J.K. Dobbins is one of the most efficient runners against a team that, hey, was surprisingly decent against, has been decent, better than what we thought against running backs thus far. But this is a team that can run the ball and score points, and I like J.K. Dobbins in this spot. Moving on to my second favorite running back play of the week. We're talking about a guy, and we're in a tricky situation because you drafted Ashton Jeanty to be your RB1. I mean, we talk about the draft capital. We talk about what Chip Kelly's run game has represented, and they're taking on the Chicago Bears this week. And the Chicago Bears have been pretty much a run funnel or a pass funnel or whatever. They just haven't been very good on defense, and that's more of a function of Dennis Allen than it is anything else, but that's a different story for a different day. So Ashton Jeanty comes in. It's been underwhelming thus far, but I mean, he's literally generating more yards yards after contact than he actually has yards. So they're not giving him much to work with. But fortunately, the Chicago Bears here are going to be game participants in allowing us to take advantage of a guy like Ashton Jeanty's talents. It's just a matter of when, not if, with Ashton Jeanty. So that's why he comes in as my RB14 on the week. Now, I do have him behind Kenneth Walker. It's a little bit more of a difficult matchup for Kenneth Walker, but I mean, Kenny Three Sticks has shown it to me time and again that it doesn't really matter. I mean, Detroit at one point last year was number 1 against fantasy running backs, and he shredded them for nearly 30 fantasy points. So he's matchup proof and he's healthy right now. So while I do love Ashton Jeanty this week, I couldn't recommend you starting him over Kenneth Walker if one of those guys was your flex. So, but let's get to my favorite running back play of the week. It's been a guy who got off to a gangbuster start, and it's been quiet these last couple weeks, but I think we're going to get back on track this week. So here we're talking about Breece Hall. So Breece Hall takes on the Miami Dolphins. This looks like a get-right spot for Breece Hall. I mean, it's going to be this kind of mercurial type of thing. Last week wasn't very good. Week 2 wasn't very good, but week 1 was absolute gangbuster. So we have a 44.5 point over under. I'm 14 spots higher than the model is on Breece Hall, and I have him ahead of Kyron Williams, as you can see here. So I think that Breece Hall is going to do some damage this week. We're going to get back on track. The Miami Dolphins have not been very stingy against the run at all this year. I mean, they allowed Daniel Jones 2 rushing touchdowns. They allowed James Cook to score a rushing touchdown. I mean, I believe in week 2, they allowed a rushing touchdown as well. So we're talking about a spot that's not frightening. They're 29th in fantasy points allowed to running back. So even though this is a 44.5 point over under and they're underdogs, Breece Hall stands to be I think this is the dark horse play for running back 1 on the week. So really excited to see what he does this week.
What's good? You know the phrase, the house always wins? Well, not anymore with our new sponsor, ProfitX. ProfitX is America's #1 sports prediction market. It's a peer-to-peer sports prediction market where users play against each other instead of a sports book versus the house. You almost always get the best price on any spread, money line, total, or player prop since you're playing against other people rather than the book. Looks and feels like a sports book, but with way better odds. So what are you waiting for? Go download the app, and get to work. Use promo code FFD and claim up to $200 in profit cash on all plays for the first 30 days of playing on site. Terms and conditions apply, of course. We're early in the week. It's Monday here, so we don't have a ton of options just yet. But as the week goes on, ProfitX gets better and better and better. More peers signing up to challenge you, and more liquidity available. So lots of good stuff as goes on, and we'll have some other reads for you. But right off the rip, the one that I found interesting, Philly, Tampa, home dogs for Tampa Bay, 3.5. Weather initial report's going to be hot in Tampa next week. So you got Philly going down south, Tampa, who's just been a tough team to deal with, hard to kill. So I'm early on here. First thing for ProfitX this week, I'm looking at Tampa Bay home dog plus 3.5. Love that little hook right there. So make sure you log in, promo code FFD, ProfitX. Check it out. Peace.
Before we get into me being a complete hater on the week, my honorable mention here is going to be Omarion Hampton. He's my RB12 on the week. Positive game script. New York Giants allowed 31. They're 31st against fantasy running backs. You've got the game script. You've got the implied point total. You have the number 2 ranked run blocking offensive line. And I'm really excited to see what he's able to accomplish this week because we wrote him off. Again, we do this all the time. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you walk away from a guy with the draft capital, first round draft capital, awesome, want to run the ball head coach and play caller. And, you had one of the best offensive lines and he just got off to a slow start. Now it's kind of confirming some things and some shortcomings that he might have as in his scouting profile, but still give it, man. Like the great coach Herman Boone always says, split veers. Hey, Omarion Hampton, give it time. It always works. So we might not get the explosive plays, but you never know. He's fully capable of that because he's massive and he's able to catch the ball out of the backfield and create explosive plays, as you saw, in his collegiate tape. It's a matter of when, not if, with Omarion Hampton. So let's move on. Now we're gonna get into some haterade here, and I don't want to spend too much time hating on people because that's just not my vibe. But here we are talking about the Lost Boys for week 4. And it's going to be a really unpopular opinion here, but I'm going with David Montgomery. He's my RB28 on the week, fresh off of that monster Monday night performance. I'm not standing the flames against this Cleveland Browns defense. This Cleveland Browns defense has been absurdly stingy against fantasy running backs. And so David Montgomery, coming off of that performance, everybody's going to be like, yeah, got to have David Montgomery. Got to have David Montgomery. They've allowed the second fewest points to fantasy running backs this year. They do have a 27-point implied point total, and they're outside of that atrocity that was week 1. They have the 11th best offensive line when it comes to run blocking. But I'm putting my foot down here, and I'm saying David Montgomery is a sit this week. My number 4 sit of the week is going to be Cam Skattebo. Cam Skattebo does get the good news. The Anglo-Saxon assassin gets his Mormon buddy, Jackson Dart, in the fold, cool curly hair and his Subaru and all. And we're talking about these guys pairing up against Jesse Minter in this vaunted, they led the league in scoring defense last year. The Los Angeles Chargers are a buzzsaw. So Cam Skattebo is going to be my number 4 sit of the week. My number 3 sit of the week is going to be another guy who absolutely blew it up last week. It's going to be Jordan Mason versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Jordan Mason, coming off the monster performance against, where they blew the doors off of the Bengals at home. We're going over the Ireland or Scotland or wherever they're going over, and the game starts at 8:30 a.m. Right, so that doesn't bode. I don't like this. I think that this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, while it has been spotty, I think that this is going to be another spot, especially if Carson Wentz is set to play, which I believe he is. So we're in a spot where we're not going to be, you're not going to have your full access to your playbook. I think it's going to be a couple weeks before we get the fully actualized version. Even if they lean on Jordan Mason, this is not going to be a ceiling performance. So as my running back 29 on the week, so we've got, just to recap here so far, David Montgomery, my running back 28 on the week. Cam Skattebo is my RB 31 against the Chargers. And I just told you Jordan Mason against the Pittsburgh Steelers, my RB 29 on the week. My number 2 sit of the week is going to be none other than DeAndre Swift. So the Las Vegas Raiders have allowed the fewest fantasy points to running backs thus far. And DeAndre Swift hasn't been particularly efficient. He does look good in spurts, but it's not enough to give me, confidence. And now you have Kyle Monangai coming in and playing about 40% of the snaps, if I'm not mistaken. So this is something there's more I'm not going to say it's a drumbeat. It might be like a slight rap on the window or something like that, but something's happening with Kyle Monangai and I don't like it for DeAndre Swift. So he's my number 2 sit of the week. My number 1 sit of the week is going to be and it pains me to say this, is going to be Chuba Hubbard. Now, Chuba Hubbard does come in as my RB22 just because I don't think that I think that he's going to handle enough volume, and this is a high enough over-under game that he's not going to – it's not going to be just horrendous. But, I mean, you got to pick somebody you don't like, and this is a matchup where they're sixth against fantasy run. The New England Patriots are sixth against fantasy running backs, and they only have a 19-point implied point total. And Chuba Hubbard's missing 2 offensive linemen in Austin Corbett, and, Robert Hunt's out for the year with a torn bicep. So all of those things lend me to believe that this could be more of a floor performance than a ceiling, but he's going to get enough volume to offset that. So when I'm giving you these rankings, I don't want you to think at all that we hate these players. I just hate their situations for this week relative to some of the other guys around him. Like Nick Chubb, for example, gets the Tennessee Titans, and we're not exactly tough against fantasy running backs. We've allowed over 100 yards rushing. We just allowed 100 yards and 3 touchdowns to Jonathan Taylor, and they called the dogs off. The week before that, we allowed 100 some odd yards rushing. Anyway, it's not that I dislike the player per se. It's just I don't love the situation this week. But that's been the running back rankings countdown. So these are the must starts and must sit plays of the week. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking around. Please consider liking, downloading, subscribing. Jump over to the free Discord we have, or you can join the Patreon. But all these things are available to you. We're doing more in-depth, breakdowns of plays, and we've got the football show also. But I'm just really excited about all of this stuff that we have going on, man. And I just wanted to thank you for sticking around this long. So, like I said, until next time, as I always say, there's ball watchers and there's ball knowers. Assign yourselves accordingly. Peace.